Thank you all for taking time today to join us for the second installment of our summer software lunch and learns. Today, we're going to be focusing on invoicing. I'd like to introduce you our presenters, Lori Kyson and Maria Ramos. Take it away.
All right, so we'll go ahead and walk you through real quick how to create an invoice. So this is after the tickets your ADAM tickets have been completed and approved for billing. So where I went to was enter invoices, e-tickets not invoiced. So on this screen, this is where you can see those e-tickets that have been approved for billing. So in this case, we have this ticket, and on here to the left of the STOTDT columns are the ticket information. So within this screen, you're able to see what has flowed through on the ticket as well, and that is not editable, but you do have the ability to see the job and the ticket if you needed to by highlighting and then clicking on View Job, View Ticket. So on this screen, you'll also be able to see what was approved for billing to the right of the ST and over on the right, along with the different comments that have come through for billing. On here, you would highlight the tickets that you'd like to create an invoice for, and then you would click on Save and Create Invoice. And since you did it through that screen, it'll automatically attach those tickets to your invoice. So on here, you'll see that if you have an auto-generated invoice number, that will populate on here. So I'm just going to go over some of the information that will populate on your invoices. On here, you'll have your company information, your yard, department, etc., and all of this information will be flowing through based on what you have on your job. So as well as the invoice description is going to come in from your scope of work. If your invoice is for a different part of a scope of work or you want to add to it, you do have the ability to edit it here. You've got your customer information over here flowing through from your job, and if you wanted to find out more information about the customer, if you click on this arrow, so anywhere you see an arrow like this and click on it, it'll open the module within NextGen for that section. So over here, it'll take you to the customer module. And over here, you can make any changes that you want to the customer record. And then let's say over here, you had an additional thing to add on here. If you save it for that customer record, it will save it for that customer record on here, and as well as what you are seeing for this particular invoice. This little caret over here will just give you a little bit of a highlight of some of the details for the customer. So anywhere you see that, it'll just be a highlight of some of that information, so you don't have to go to that portion to get all of that information. But again, if you open this up, you can see the detail and go into the job site screen as well. And then over here, you've got a map ability. So if you have that set up on your computer, you can click on this and it'll give you the pinpoint of the map on there. So again, all of this is coming in from your job. Your invoice date is going to default to the date that you are creating the invoice. So if you need to change it, you can go into this field and either open up the calendar or type in the date that you would like it to be. These terms are coming in from how you have it set up in your customer record, but if your terms need to be different for an invoice, you can select a different set of terms on an invoice level. But as you can see, if you do have a term with a discount in it, it will calculate what the discount date and discount amount should be based on what those terms are. On here for your export status, that will come in based on how you have it defaulted. On here, we will come back to export status in a little bit. On here too is a PO number field, and if you have a PO number set up either on the job level or on the job level, if you have that entered in there, it will flow through on here. If not, you do have the ability to update it at this point in time. Up here, you do have some menu options. So on these three dots, you'll see that you're able to easily create a new invoice based on the three dots. You can go between records just by clicking on these arrows, going to the very first invoice, or you can go to, the next one or the last one that you have on here or your previous record. This is also where you can create a credit invoice directly from an invoice that's already been created. So you can either credit the invoice or just the tax. Those are the buttons that you can click on to do that. On here, you have a refresh button. So right now, since we haven't saved our invoice yet, that's why this is grayed out. But once we save it, you'll be able to see this refresh invoice. So if you wanted to refresh the invoice for the most current information, you would select that. Refresh sources means that any source is tied to this. So if you have anything for like the purchase orders or your tickets, if you click on this, it will refresh to the most current information that you have for those items. On here on your gear, this is where you can save what the layout will look like. Save screen layout on exit means that as you exit, however you have this screen customized for what you wanted to see, because you do have an ability to make this a little bit smaller, things like that. You can have it set so this will save it, so the next time you come in, it will remember your selections on that point. Lock navigation menu, if you take this off, you'll see that it's just the icons without the names of the icons or description of the icons. If you put it on, it will open that up and keep it locked that way. And this is your save button. So if you click on this, it will save what you have. So you don't want to save your invoice until you've gone to your details tab and made sure that you've updated it for what you're billing out for. Because as you can see, it will automatically default to having a 0 quantity on each of your billing codes, because it will allow you to be able to put in how you want it to be billed for this invoice. And what happens is if you save it before putting in the quantity, in order to make it more efficient for you, if you have any line items or billing codes that have a 0 quantity, it will automatically just delete it for this particular invoice. It'll retain it on your job, but for this particular invoice, so you don't have to go and delete every line that has a 0, it will automatically do it for you. So basically, you want to make sure that you've already set up your invoice the way you want it, and then hit save, and then it'll automatically delete those lines that you don't need for this particular invoice. So as I mentioned, these billing codes are coming in based on how you have the estimated billing set up on your job. So that is something that you want to make sure that whoever is responsible for keeping that updated, whether it's your salesperson or perhaps it's your dispatcher, whoever is responsible for making sure that the estimated billing is looking correctly based on how the job is and how it should be billed, because it may change from how you've created it from a quote. Then it'll flow through much more efficiently on your invoices and less that you have to update at the invoicing level. So with that being said, a few things that you can use for your tools to determine how it should be billed. On this tab is your e-tickets. And so any of the e-tickets that are tied to this job will show up on here. So this is the ticket that we went through, the one that had been approved for billing. But even if you have some tickets that have not been approved yet, they will show up on here. You'll be able to see the ticket status as well as whether or not it's been approved. On here, you'll be able to see if that has been approved, what was entered on there for what should be billed for straight time, overtime, or double time, along with, if you scroll over here, if there were any ticket comments as well. If you have multiple tickets tied to this, you will be able to see the cumulative total. So if you are billing, creating an invoice and you want to incorporate the entirety of what the total should be, you can easily see that on here as well. And then if any invoices were generated off of this job already, you'll be able to see the invoice history. Okay, so when we go back to these tickets, we can see that, based on how it was approved, we should bill for 8 hours straight, 2 hours overtime, 4 hours double time. So even though it's been approved that way, whoever is creating the invoice still has the ability, if they know that it should be billed differently than how it was approved for, they still have that flexibility to be able to do so. Okay. So I wanted to visit a couple of other menu options here on the left before we do start entering the details for the invoice. So on here, you have in-house comments. So you can enter in-house comments directly into here by clicking here to add new item. But if there are any comments that are coming in based on how it was approved, and if it was marked to be included for invoicing, those comments will come in here as well. So you can see that there was a comment that was entered here. And whenever you click on that, the thing that looks like a little box, that will expand out your text box. So you do have a lot of room to either type in it, or if you're pulling in information that was automatically updated into here, you'll be able to open up this box. And as you can see, this comment says reach out to customer to confirm PO number before sending out the invoice. So that was a note that came in to be included for invoicing. So on here, whoever would be responsible for following up on that comment can click on resolved. It'll automatically populate whoever the user is, and then they can put in a comment as well. And you can put in the note for what it was to resolve. And as I mentioned, you can also click to add additional comments on here if needed. And you will see that little bubble that shows you how many in-house comments there are. So if there aren't any in-house comments, there won't be any red bubble, so you know that there isn't anything to look at for that. Also on here, since we have a little red bubble, we know that there is a purchase order that was generated against this job. So on here, we see that it was a PO for subcontractors. So we needed to have 2 additional riggers for this job that we didn't have available in-house. So we see on here that each of the riggers were for 8 straight time hours each. So for that, we'll probably want to keep that in mind when we are billing out. And even though we are subcontracting those riggers, we probably will still bill our customer in the same fashion as we would as if they were our in-house employees. So with that being said, we can update how we're billing this to show for the operator's straight time. We have 8 hours from our employee and then the 16 hours from our subcontractor. So we can put in 24 that we're billing out hours on here for overtime. We had 2, and then double time we had 4. And then on here, if we were billing out for the monthly crane rental, we can put that on here as well. And then similarly to how I was updating here, you'll be able to see on any of these that you can update the dates, any of the comments, any of the rates as well on here. It's going to bring in your default rates if you have that, or on the estimates tab. However you have that generated on there, that's how it'll bring it in, but you do have the ability to update the quantities and rates as needed. So as I mentioned before, if you have any of your billing code line items with a 0 quantity, such as this permit will leave at 0, and the demobilization and mobilization for this example will leave at 0, just so I can show you how those fall off. But with the fuel surcharge, we'll go ahead and put in a quantity of 1 on here. And then if we wanted to say that for this particular instance, it's actually 10%. If something changed between what you have on your estimate side, you still have that ability. So now when I click on save, and we'll go ahead and say, yes, it's fine for this particular example. You'll see now that the mobilization, demobilization, and permit lines did fall off automatically. Okay. So now that we have our invoice that on here, a couple things that I wanted to show you as well is up here under export status. Again, you have these export statuses that are available. Export not okay and export okay are your default export statuses, but you are also able to create additional export statuses under maintain export status. So we did add in pending approval and under review as some additional export statuses. So you are able to toggle between those. Whenever you have an approval that's required, your export status will need to be either not export not okay or one of your other export statuses. You will not be able to change it to export okay until an approval has been done. So we'll leave that for now so I can walk you through how to approve these invoices. And then the same with your PO number. If you require a PO number for your customers, then this will also need to be marked if a PO is needed, because again, you won't be able to export the invoice until you have the PO number readily available. So in any of these cases, you'll still be able to generate the invoice and print it, but you just won't be able to export it to your accounting package until those have been resolved. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that for now. So how you'll go about seeing which of these invoices need to be approved and which need additional information like PO, you'll go to your reports, and then you'll go to invoices, and then over here needs PO. On here, when you click on view, it will show you all of the invoices that still need a PO. And you will see on here too, if you expand your export status, what the export status is on there. So you have quite a bit of information. And so anybody that you have that has a permission to go ahead and go into the invoice and add the PO information can go in here, and all they have to do to be able to add the PO number is to double click into the line of the invoice that they would like to see, and it will automatically open up that invoice. And on here, to add a PO number, all they have to do is uncheck this box, and it'll open up that field. And as I had shared before, if you click on this box over here, it'll open it up to more space for you to add in that information. Or you can type it directly into that line if it's only going to be one line item. So we'll just go ahead and put this in, and then we can go ahead and save it. So now it has a PO number in it. It will ask you if you want to make this the PO number for the job itself, or if you want it to just be the PO number for this particular invoice. So that will just be up to you if that is a PO number that should follow the job, or if it's just for this particular invoice. Okay. Go ahead and save again, and then I'll go ahead and minimize this. So the other report, it just takes a minute. So let me just show you on here. This was a needs PO report that we were in. If I click on view again, you'll see that invoice fell off because it no longer needs a PO. If you wanted to print the list of the invoices that are showing on here, you can click on print, and it will print a list for you. Okay. Go ahead and close these. Another report that you can run now to see which invoices need to be approved is under reports, invoices, invoice approval report. You'll go up here and you'll select your date range. So it's just good practice to always make sure that your date ranges are correct, because most of the time it does follow from the last time that you selected your date range, but just in case, it's just good practice to double check that the date ranges are correct. Over here, you have the ability to filter by different things like company, yard, department, terms, salesperson, and approval status. So this is helpful if you have multiple people that need to approve, and if you have them assigned, let's say, for a department, particular department, you can have them filter through that, so they'll only see the information that they need to approve. So on here, for approval status, you'll want to select need to be approved. For export status, you'll see that all of your export statuses come up. And again, as I mentioned, it will not be marked export OK if it still needs to be approved. So in this case, you can either select one of the export statuses, or you can do a multi-select here. So I'm selecting all of the export statuses that are not approved and not marked as export OK. Then you can select if you wanted to for just invoices that are created by a specific user on here. Otherwise, you can click on view, and in this case, I'm pulling up everything that needs to be approved. So you will see that there are these 3 invoices that still need to be approved. This is the one that we were working with, so I'm going to go ahead and double click on it to open it. And then on here, whoever is approving the invoice can go ahead and then go through the details, make sure everything looks good. If they have any questions, they can go back to whoever created the invoice, if anything needs to be updated. But for this purpose, we'll say that it's been approved, and so all they need to do, whoever is approving it, just needs to check this box as approved, you'll see that the export status changed to export OK. Okay. All right. So now that we have that approved, if we were back in this report and I clicked on view, you'll see that that invoice has now fallen off because it has been approved. All right, so now how do we export the invoices into the accounting package? So if you do have an integration with your accounting package to export your invoices, you would go under Export, Import, Export Invoices. And on here, again, you have filters for your company, your department. You click on View, and it'll come up with all of the invoices that have not been exported yet. So you can either click on Select All at the bottom over here if you wanted to export all of the invoices that are marked as Export OK, or you can click on one invoice if you wanted to just export one invoice, or you can do a multi-select if you wanted to select multiple invoices. So depending on the integration with your accounting package, it may create a file, or it may be a different method that is going to be imported into your accounting package, but that again will be depending on the accounting package that you are working with. All right, some other reports that will be helpful for invoices is under Reports, Invoices, under Invoice Register. So over here again, we want to make sure our date range is correct, and also our filters are correct. And on this, you're able to either select a specific job if you wanted to, and if you left it blank, it will pull up all the invoices that you have in that date range that you've generated. Here you have subtotal by yard. In our example right now, we just have one yard set up, but if you had multiple yards set up and you have invoices generated for those multiple yards, it will break it down so that you'll be able to see it by yard. So over here, you'll see that this report shows the name of the yard up on top, and then the group of invoices that have been generated against that yard. You'll be able to see the invoice detail along for the total by yard and also the total by for the entire company, what your selection is, the cumulative total. For any of our reports, you can also go to Save As, and you'll be able to save this PDF version, but you can also select other file formats such as Excel or CSV. So if you do save it as an Excel file, for some of our reports, you will get additional information because there will be additional columns that are available to you. So that's one way for you to potentially get additional information, is save it as an Excel file. So let me just show you how this will look like if you didn't have subtotal by yard checked off. So on here, again, because we only have one yard, you're not going to see how it will look like with multiple yards versus just one yard. But as you can see, this now changed to all yards, and this is still the same invoice listing, but if you had multiple yards, it would all come out like this with one list and then just a cumulative total for the company or however you have it set up over here. All right. Another report that will come in handy for you is Invoices Batch Audit Report. So the report that we just took a look at has the main information of your invoices on that report. Again, on this one, double check your date range before you run it. And on here, you have the ability to select if you wanted to just show invoices that have been exported, invoices that have not been exported, or all of the invoices that you've generated for that date range. So the difference between the invoice register and the batch audit report is on this report, under the detail tab, you'll be able to see more information about the invoices that were generated, not just the invoice number, but also customer, invoice date, discount, if there's a discount on the terms, but also your breakout by GL account for that breakout of your invoice. So as you can see on this particular invoice, it's the one that's DECR I-26, that the breakout has it going to 4 different GL accounts. Then on your summary tab, you'll be able to see cumulatively which GL accounts, the invoices that were generated for that date range, which GL accounts they will be going to. Some other reports that give you additional information is under your expenses, revenue, profit, and under summary reports by invoice date. On here again, check your date range. And on here, you'll see that you can again filter by your company and yard. On here too, you're able to view by multiple ways on here. We'll leave it all selected yards, but as you can see, there are many ways that you're able to filter this report. You do have a profit and revenue button on here. We'll start off with the revenue button. When you click on view, this gives you a yard revenue summary. So if we had multiple yards, you'll see the list of the yard along with the revenue per yard and then the breakout of percentage based on what that percentage is in relation to the total revenue. On here, when you switch it to the profit button and you click on view, you'll see that there's a little bit more detail as to the profit and loss summary. So you'll see that this breaks it out by job number and also by yard and your cumulative total. So I will walk through what each of these columns mean in some of our other upcoming reports that I will be demonstrating. So the next report I'd like to show you is reports, expenses, revenue, profit, revenue detail report by invoice date. So on here, you are able to, again, double check your dates, filter by your company yard, and then again, if you wanted to subtotal by yard, you can. You have other filters that you can select on here as well. On here, if you have a project, you can see what that detail is by project. And so where you find this project number is under your job field, and we'll go back to the job that we were looking at earlier. And under the parameters field, there's a project number on here. So as long as you have the same project number for the jobs that you want to tie together, they will appear on this report that you'll be able to select that project number. So we do have some jobs that are tied together by this particular project number. So some times that you may want to use a project number is if, let's say, you have multiple scopes of work that is part of an overall project for a customer, you can create then multiple jobs within NextGen and tie it together with this project number. Or let's say you may have one scope of work, but you are going out to the customer multiple times throughout a long period of time, and you may want to be able to bill out on, each time that you go out, you may want to create multiple jobs within NextGen, but again, tie it together with one project number. Those are just some ways that you can use the project number field. And again, it can be a combination of letters and numbers, whatever you'd like it to be, but the key is that they all have to match exactly the way that you have it in the project number field. So the easiest way to do it is the very first job that you select to have a project number is just do that, copy that, whatever you put in that field exactly as it is, and just paste it into the project number field for the rest of the jobs that you want to tie together. That way you know that it's in there all the same way. Okay. Now when I click on view, I'll see on here the total revenue detail by project on here. So this will tell me all of the information based on the date range, and we will open that up a little bit more. It's for these particular projects. We had it stretched out a little bit more, and you'll see that detail on here. So you'll be able to see the breakout by job and then the cumulative for that particular project. So for this revenue detail report, with the detail report that you're running, you're also able to get that detail underneath of how these numbers were generated. So for your total revenue, that represents invoicing. So that is the total of the invoices that you generated against those jobs and that for that particular project. The labor hours and labor expenses columns come in from the labor entries where that job number is tied to those labor entries. Your union expenses are coming in from the calculation based on how you have your benefits tab set up under your union codes, and then multiplied by whatever that factor is that needs to be multiplied. So that is based on when the labor entries are posted. Your workers' comp expenses are also based on the different workers' comp rates that you have created in NextGen and then tied to the labor entry. So you do have to make sure that you have a workers' comp code tied to the labor entry when you have posted it or processed it for this to generate the workers' comp expense. So that is based again on the number of hours along with the workers' comp code that is selected for the labor entry. Burden expenses are similar. Whatever burden code you have created in NextGen, whenever you have your labor entry processed and posted, whatever burden expense code or burden code you have tied to that labor entry will then calculate what burden expenses come in this column. Equipment expenses are when you have units tied to your entries for these particular jobs and what you have under the allocated and rental hourly cost field for that specific piece of equipment. So that is tied to the specific piece of equipment, how many hours times that rate that you have in there. Your material expenses are coming in from your purchase orders. So any purchases that you're making against that job and when you put in the job number on that purchase. Okay, which brings you to your total expenses. So the total profit and loss is taking the total revenue less the total of the labor hours, labor expenses, unit expense, union, workers' comp, burden, equipment, and material expenses. So on here, you'll see it also calculates the profit percentage on a job-by-job basis and also on a cumulative basis. So in this particular example, you can see that our first job, DCRJ22, really had a bad loss on that job. But overall, on the job itself, when you've added everything together, it actually is profitable at 9.83%. Okay. So as we scroll down, you'll be able to see per job what the invoices are, your materials, where that cost is coming in, and for your labor. And again, these can also be saved as an Excel file, and then you'll find that each of these will be on different tabs on your Excel file. So some other reports that you can run is under reports, again, expenses, revenue, profit, and you have a job profit and loss by invoice date as well. On here, you still have your filters. And again, make sure that your date range is correct on here. And then you can do it by job number on here. If you wanted to select just a specific job, you can also select just by job status. So if you wanted to see all of the jobs that were marked complete or confirmed, you can do that or leave it all at all job statuses. You're able to view by summary and by detail. We'll start off with the summary. Again, you can subtotal by yard if you'd like to, or uncheck that and have it just as a cumulative. So on here, you'll see that for that date range I've selected, since I selected all job status, these are all the jobs in here for that date range. And then the breakout like we had walked through in the prior screen. And you're able to see by yard. We have subtotal by yard. If we had additional yards, you'll see another section for that yard as well. And then at the end, you'll see a cumulative total. If we didn't have the subtotal by yard checked off, then you'll see it just as a cumulative total without a breakout by yard. Now here on your detail, if you toggle to your detail, this is similar to the other report that we just walked through. And this will show you by job on here and then underneath each one where the numbers are coming from for that particular job. Okay. Now another report that you can run is the job estimates unbilled report. So when you go to your jobs, reports, jobs, billing reports, job estimates unbilled, what this report will show you is anything based on what you have under your estimated billing tabs on your job, any of those billing codes that are on there. So as you can see here, for these particular jobs, these are the billing codes under the estimated billing tab on here, and it will show you based on what was quoted, what's been billed, and what is still open, what still needs to be billed on here. So you can still get an estimate of anything that, again, you still need to bill out. On here, I've selected the option to include all unbilled estimates. So what that means is, as you can see in this first line, there's a 0 quantity quoted. So you might have some of your lines, like in instance, we'll look at the second job. Under overtime hourly, you may include that line because you're only going to bill it if there's overtime. But if you don't have overtime, you're not going to bill it. It will still show anything that's got a 0 quantity quoted. And you'll see that this is 7 pages long. But if you select exclude 0 quantity estimates, that will remove any of those lines like this overtime hourly that shows 0. So if we click on view, you'll see that now it's 6 pages long. And if you recall, there was another job before this, Florida Power and Light, on that other selection. So again, this is only going to bring the quantities that have or the billing codes that have a quantity of at least 1 or more. So on here, you'll see the cumulative total per job of what is still the estimate of what needs to be billed. So if we already had some billed, like if we take this very last line with the permit, if the quote was for 2 and you already billed 1, if one of them was billed out, it would just show an open quantity of 1 and an unbilled amount just for that one item. So you're able to utilize this report if you're wanting to know how much potential revenue might we still have coming in if we were to bill everything based on our estimates unbill or billing estimate tab. What potential revenue do we still have coming in? So for this time frame, we still have a potential of $63,000, almost $64,000 worth of billing that we can generate. And again, as with any of the other reports, you are able to save this as an Excel file if you would prefer to see it in that fashion. Some other reports tied to invoicing that might be helpful for you is on here. Let me share my other screen. Is if you have the Power BI package, we do have some billing reports that are available. Right here is a billing report by unit type and unit. So you'll be able to see that there's a summary on top with just some of the key information, but you do have the ability to see the total billed by billing code and that breakout on there. And on the right, a little bit more detail on those. And then on your bottom left, you've got a little pie graph that shows you based on percentage with the billing codes and how that's broken out. So you can visually see how that breakout is. And on the bottom right, you also can see how it's billed out monthly and what the average is. And then on any of these, if you were to click on that, you can see some of the information on here. On the right, it changes, so you can see the more of the drilling in and seeing that information that is relating to that particular item. You also have a billing report by a salesperson, so if you wanted to see that as well, how it is by salesperson, you have some similar things that you have available to you, which is by percentage of the billing code or unit type. And then underneath, you've got the details by customer and shows you the salesperson and all of the billing code information as well. And you also have the ability to run this report by billing code or this dashboard by billing code as well. So you'll see on here, you can see based on the billing code, which ones that you're billing for most, which ones are not as revenue generating. And you also have on the right your detail. And on the bottom, you have your graph, which is the average by month. And then you also have a billing detail report on here, and you have lots of ways that you can filter this if you wanted to see the information just based on some of these selections on here. And then you can also go into here to get more detail by schedule types and by any of these other line items on the bottom. So these are just some of the tools, tips, and tricks that you can utilize as you are invoicing out of NextGen. And now I'd like to turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Maria.
Matt?
Yeah, so right on time there. Now we're just going to transition to a Q&A portion. I know Lori has a few questions that came in that she's going to start with, but everyone else out there, please ask any questions you might have had, and we can kind of continue on with this. If questions come in after the call's over, we can address those as well via our customer success team.
Okay, yep, I am gonna get us those questions. So one of those questions was, are you able to create an invoice before the tickets are completed?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Lori?
Yep, are you able to create an invoice before the tickets are completed?
So yes, you are able to create an invoice before tickets are completed. So on here, to create your invoices before your tickets are completed, you would go under Invoices, Rental Invoices, and you're able to pull up your job number that you'd like to create the invoice for. So in this particular case, we can pull this one up. And you'll still be able to see the information on here if you have any tickets that still need to be completed. This particular example, we don't, but you'll be able to see the tickets and what they are, and you'll be able to generate your invoice as well. And then I'd like to note that if you have the tickets on here and they get completed afterwards, you will have the ability to select it just by clicking on the little box next to it to put a check mark. And you can also select it if you wanted to print the ticket with an invoice, if you wanted to regenerate an invoice. But it's easy enough to attach a ticket afterwards, even if you've already created the invoice. Thank you for that question.
Okay, along those same lines, Maria, here's another question. How do I create an invoice without a job?
Okay, so you do need a job number in order to. You do need a job number in order to create an invoice.
Okay. And another question that popped up, it looks like, it just says, how does the export to the accounting software work? Do we have, and also in kind of in my mind, the export to accounting, do we have packages with all accounting software, or just kind of maybe a little more explanation on how that works? I know you touched on that, but.
Right. So depending on if
I know we don't want to get into that too much, of course, because we can spend another hour on that, but.
Right. So depending on if you have an integration to your accounting software, and if you don't, and you would like to look into whether or not there is a possibility to integrate with your accounting software, you can reach out to your salesperson, and they can let you know if that's a possibility. But if you do already have that set up, you would go under Export, Import, Export Invoices. And then depending on the settings in NextGen based on your integration, it will create either a file or give you that ability to integrate with your accounting software. And I do see that there are a couple of questions that came in under the chat. So someone did say that you can create it under a parts invoice if you don't have a job. So thank you for that. Yes, so you can use your parts invoice on here to create one without a job if needed. And then the other question, if there's more information for projects and how they are used. So really for projects, we use it mainly for reporting purposes. So as you saw for the project profit and loss report, that's really how it's used for projects on there. So if you again, if you wanted to tie multiple jobs together, that's where the project number field is utilized to be able to do that easily. Does anybody have any
By
other
the way,
questions?
we love this interaction with the chats because I know other, customers use things differently. And if you want to pop in with questions or comments on how you're using it and can give advice on how our other customers can use it. So, yep, definitely. So ask away. Oh, and here's another question. How often should I invoice?
Okay. So that will definitely depend on your internal processes and how often you usually invoice. So we do recommend best practice is to try to do it daily or at least every other day. And that really is looking at your e-tickets not invoiced. And then before that, making sure that you've got all of your e-tickets completed so that you can, at the point in time that you need to invoice, you are ready to invoice, because that is the key, that you have all of your e-tickets completed and none that are outstanding, just so that you do have the full picture when you're ready to invoice. Oh, and then someone did ask about how to get to the project page. So the project page comes in under Schedule, Job. So you're going to pull up your job. And then under your job, under the parameters or additional info field, you'll see this project number field. And this is where you'll enter in that information. And so another question is, what kind of job should we use project numbers on? So you can actually use it for a variety of reasons. So let's say you have a customer that you are doing a big project for that has multiple scopes. And so you are going to be creating a job for each of those scopes within NextGen, but you want to be able to tie it together so that you can take a look and see if the overall project is profitable, or if it needs to be tweaked on your quoting part of it, things. If you're looking at that when you're working with one of your bigger customers that may have a bigger project, that may be one reason that you use a project number. Also, if you have projects such as like your refinery data centers or steel mills, well, they might have like different job numbers that you have that you need to tie together. You can do that as well. And so if you also have projects that you may want to tie together, and it doesn't even have to be all the same for the same customer, you could do that as well. So just so long as you have the same project number in this field for all of the jobs, that is key. So I wanted to just kind of show you on here. You can have different characters on here. You can have it as long as as lengthy of a project number as you want, as short of a project number as you want. Key is, again, that it's just all the same format. So all I would do is just highlight this, copy, and then paste it into each of the jobs that you want to tie together. And then once you enter a project number on here, it will appear on that drop-down list for project when we were running the report. So just as long as you have it in one job, it will show up as an available option when you're running those reports. And yes, you can add the project numbers after your invoices are created or the job is complete. And somebody did ask about, would it be handy to be able to invoice to a project rather than individual jobs? So there's not a way for you to select a project number when you're creating the invoices. So you would still generate the invoice based on an individual job, and again, run those reports to be able to see the cumulative totals for your revenue and expenses on a project level. Do we have any other questions? We're happy to answer them for you.
Great questions. Yep.
Yes, good question. And thank you for that hand clap too. We appreciate that too.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Maria, do you know that what they're asking there? Not sure.
Oh, sure. Okay. Is there a way to change e-tickets between jobs? No, there is not. Simply because once the e-tickets have been generated, well, okay, I should kind of back up. There is a way for you to potentially, depending on how you have your settings in NextGen, cancel an e-ticket after you've generated it, just so long as you haven't started with, getting your first signature and completing it, things like that. So there's a way for you to cancel and then generate LEM on another job if needed. But once you've completed an e-ticket, it does retain the information based on when that e-ticket was generated and completed. So you can't change, if like you have a change of customer or job number, you can't change that. However, if you needed to, if you needed to essentially create a new job and transfer that job over to the new job, you could, but you would have to use your comments. You would have to download those e-tickets and reattach it to the new job. And then, use your comment field to know, yes, exactly. So yes, basically because your customer at that point in time is signing off based on the details that were presented on that original e-ticket at that time it was generated. But that's a very good question. And as you can see, you do have those statuses within the main part of your job here. So if you wanted to say transfer and then put into your comments over here, which job number it was transferred to. And then the same, when you have your new job, you can note which job it was transferred from. So you can tie that all together. And that may be a way too that you would use your project number. So you could tie those two jobs together. Any other
Thanks,
questions?
Maria.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone, we're at the 60-minute mark. So we're going to wrap this session up. Thanks again to Lori and Maria for the presentation. Thank you all for being here for that. Yeah, so we're going to be here same time, same place next week. So if you like what you saw and you want to learn some more, we're discussing scheduling and Atom next week. Yeah, thanks again to our presenters for covering a topic in such a way that a marketing guy like me might be able to begin to understand this invoicing stuff. It's critical stuff too, right? Those back of house processes, getting that stuff down, making sure, you're getting paid for all the work you guys are doing is important. And we're happy to kind of help with that and educate you on that. So just remember, if you like what you see here and you want a training program tailored to the needs of your team, please contact your salesperson and they can put something together for you. And finally, we'll be receiving a survey shortly after in your inbox. So if you have a moment or two, we really value and appreciate your feedback so we can continue to improve on how we run these things and the topics that we cover. So your input on one of those surveys would be really appreciated. So with that, thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll conclude this session now and hopefully see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.